Now, where was she when you were doing that?
She was just at home
And
watching TV.
Watching TV?
Yeah.
Okay, and did she see you leave the house presenting as a woman?
Yeah.
Hey, welcome to Powerful Shares. I'm here to connect. I'm Melissa, and here we discuss powerful, vulnerable stories, hoping to connect with different groups of people out there because we are not alone in our struggles, and we certainly don't need to suffer in silence. Today, my guest is Tawni, and she is going to share a story on her transgender journey. Tawni, thank you so much for joining me. It's so nice to have you.
Thank you, Melissa. It's really good to see you.
So, all right, so let's hear it. Do you want to just jump into this story or what?
Okay, well, I'll let you lead the dance, all right?
Okay, so let's hear it.
Okay. So anyway, yeah, I'm a transgender woman. I started transitioning or started identifying probably about, let's see, we're in 2024. It's almost 10 years ago,
Oh,
2014. So let me back up though. So I am older. I was born in 1959.
Okay.
For somebody like me, there was not anything. There was zero.
Right.
So, you kind of just grew up and tried to figure stuff out and do the best you can. Okay. I had feelings at a young age. I knew I was different. I didn't have the verbiage to really articulate it. I couldn't really express it. Yet I think at a young age, number one, I knew I was different. Second, I knew, oh my God, it is totally not safe for me to express what I'm feeling inside.
Okay, so can I ask you, so where are you from?
Oh, thank you. I was born in Pasadena, California.
Okay, and so how old were you when you started to feel like you were different?
I would have to say somewhere around 5 or 6 years old, I started to feel the differences.
Okay, and you remember that?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think that doing a heck of a lot of therapy and stuff like that, there was definitely repressed stuff there,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's such a young age too. Yeah. So, okay. So let's hear it. So how did you carry on as a kid and then into adulthood?
Yeah, I think what it is, there's a part of you that we just try to make the best that we can. Yet what happens if you're not totally yourself or you don't feel safe to be yourself, then you do you incorporate at a young age a whole bunch of unhealthy coping skills, or maybe they're coping skills that work at that moment, but somehow they carry on for the rest of your life. In my case, I think it kind of like I got into this point of their common vernacular nowadays, like people pleasing, trying to fit in, trying to be part of the crowd.
Got it. Okay. And you said you didn't have words for how you felt different. So it probably took a while for you to really be able to conceptualize that too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
The best way I would use it, number one, if you feel it's utterly not safe to be yourself, everybody deals with it differently. We're all unique. In my case, what I did is I just stuffed it as far down as that could go.
Okay. Yeah.
And because number one, I didn't feel safe. Number two, I knew if I had a difficult relationship with my father. I know he loved me, I loved him, but it was still a very challenging and difficult relationship.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt at a young age, I can say this honestly now, that it was hard enough as it was. And then if I were verbalizing what I felt, oh my God, there's no way I was going to get through it. Because there's a lot of stuff that happens, in that generation. There's a lot of violence, a lot of stuff like that. And so I think for me, I just stuffed that down and tried my best to fit in with what there was in that day. So, was I good at sports? Not so much, So I tried to fit in with the things that I could do, And I think what happens is you internalize something at that young age. You internalize there's something wrong about how I feel. There's something wrong about me. And then I did my best to actually cover that up.
Okay. So, and how did you cover it up?
I think I covered it up either one, by overcompensating, like trying to do so many things that I didn't have to really think about it. So in other words, I think this was a lifelong pattern for me. And in other words, that if I was just busy, if I kept myself occupied, kept myself busy, I didn't have to think about the thoughts that were in my head.
Got it. Okay. And so about what age would you say this was all occurring at? Like high school-ish?
I think, definitely for me, if I go back and I think about when more of a conscious awareness, I think it's hard to put an age, maybe like 12 or so. Mm-hmm. And I think that's, the beginnings of your body beginning to change, the beginnings of, sexual drive and all that stuff. And then you're starting to, go from quote unquote boy to man. And all of a sudden I'm starting to get a body I don't want.
Got it. Okay. So at that point, what, how did you deal with that at that point?
Oh God. I think there's just, on the one hand, there's just all the awkwardness that goes with, making that childhood transition, right? And there's that goes on. And then second, I think what goes on is like, hey, wait a minute, I don't think I signed up for this deal. I'm getting the wrong bargain here, right? And so I think how I dealt with it is just, oh my God, I had a lot of suppressed anger.
Okay, really?
Oh yeah, very, very intense. Very intense anger, and also very intense because I think when you're not fully yourself, I was subject to a lot of bullying. Mm-hmm. And so when you experience something in one place, it's actually every place. I was experiencing it at home with my family. I was experiencing when I went to school. I was experiencing everywhere. So I think when I was in 4th, 5th, or 6th grade, that was not fun. It was pretty miserable, quite frankly. And so I think there were certain things that gave me solace. In particular, I had a skill or a talent for music. In particular, was playing trumpet. And so, the school that I had an excellent music program. So I would just immerse and escape into those type of activities.
Okay.
So it's healthy for children that they have that outlet of expression.
Yeah.
So that served me a lot. Yet it's like, oh my God, there's all these changes, but I don't want them.
Right. Okay. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So at this point, right, when you're like, wow, this isn't the bargain, at that point where you are able to articulate to yourself what the issue was. Okay, so probably around like 12-ish, you were able to identify.
I think more, if I had to say, probably more 13 or 14.
Wow.
And I think 12, 13, 14, somewhere around there. And I think this is common with many people who are trans. I had an older sister, and I used to steal her clothing and dress in her clothing.
Okay.
I think other people have similar experiences, whether it's an aunt or their mother, or maybe it's somewhere out there. So I began to secretly express myself that way. Uh-huh. But that was it was like a fundamental need. I had needed to present as feminine.
Right.
Yet I couldn't so I only could find times and places when people were in my house, or my parents weren't there, or my sister wasn't there. And so literally I would steal her clothing and present that way. And then if somebody was coming home, I would quickly eject and then go back to what I was.
Okay. Wow. Got it. So let me ask you this. This was all around early teens.
Yep.
But 10 years ago, you transitioned, right? So for all that time, you lived as a male.
That's correct.
And that must have been pure suffering for you.
It was crazy.
What was your life like at that point?
Sure. I came to some conclusion. This is life. This is just as good as it gets. And I'm going to make the best of it. So in a way, I went out, got a degree. I had a degree in computer science, minor in mathematics, mathematical physics. And, I just kind of did the standard stuff you're supposed to do. Got a degree, went out and got a career, worked in all kinds of career in software, engineering, many storied things within those areas, and then did the things of, I could call the typical middle class existence. I actually, met somebody, we got married. I got married when I was 30 years old.
30?
Yep.
To a woman?
Yeah, to a woman, correct.
Okay.
And so had, quote unquote, if I had to characterize the whole thing, it's like kind of a middle class lifestyle.
Got it.
Married, we weren't able to have children, though we wanted to. But we were married. I had a career. We lived in middle-class suburbia in Los Angeles. I was technology worker. I had all these different positions, all these different roles. I was kind of living the life that I thought I was supposed to, or live the life that I thought was going to make me happy, because that's what everybody did.
Right. So at what point were you like, okay, enough is enough. This just isn't right and I can't do it anymore?
Right. I think that, that big aha moment is in 2011. My mom passed away at the same time my mother-in-law was living with us, and they died a year apart. But I think I was exceptionally close to my mom. And when she died away, I had a delayed grieving process, just because of everything going on in my life. So when the real grieving of my mom's passing hit me, that's when it's, like there's a thing about death that it just brings out the core issues. It cuts through all the BS.
Wow.
It really does. And I think one thing, if death, especially death of your loved ones, it kind of, you see your own mortality in the passing of your loved ones, your parents, family, and so forth. And I think in my case, it's like I just had this question, like, I'm investing all my energy in suppressing this.
Wow.
And it's like, I can't do this anymore.
Wow.
That's what the grieving part about. So in a weird way, I would say my mom's passing was a very benevolent thing for me, because it forced that on me.
Wow.
And because it did, then I didn't make like, oh, I'm going to come out now and blah, blah. I just made a couple like, okay, what a lot of people do who are closeted, who are trans, they kind of go through a binge and bust cycle. What I mean by that is like, I would buy female clothing, I would hide that, I would find secret times that I could dress and present as woman. And then what you do with that, there's some point where your inner conflict is so strong and so disturbing that you try and deal with it by like, oh, well, I'm going to just purge all this stuff. Like I have control over something I can't control.
Oh.
And so I promised myself two things. One, I would stop that cycle. And two, I wasn't going to repress anymore. It was just that simple.
And how long were you married for at this point?
A long time. 20 plus years.
20 plus years. Okay. I'm interested in your ex-wife's response.
Okay. Wow. I think what happened is there's various times in the relationship where it comes out in little ways, because it's a pressure cooker,
right? And
the steams cannot escape. And so I think there was one time with a whole bunch, without going into story, at one point I had sought help through a healer, and really this is the first time I actually expressed to somebody like, "Ooh, I have these feelings," and basically this healer who was helping us have a child, but he was a healer, like in the true sense of the word. And he's like, well, you need to talk this out and I'll help you talk it out with your wife. And so I would say many years later, I had like a mini coming out with her, like, hey, I have this feeling, this inclination, and maybe my sexuality is a little fluid,
Yeah.
And I didn't attach words to it, but I just said, yeah, I have these feelings like towards dressing and towards being a woman. I guess they've always been there. At that time, how she took it was not good. Basically, She stopped speaking to me for a while.
Oh, wow.
And then because I was so invested in having that validation of a middle class lifestyle, I was so invested in looking like, hey, I'm normal, I'm good, everything's fine with me. But that is like, let's be honest, fake it till you make it that has never worked, and it don't work.
Right.
So, but that was my life,
Wow.
And so I think, if I had a mini coming out, it didn't go well. It's kind of like sticking my foot out of the closet and then promptly just yanking it back in.
Yeah, based on her response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so what happened several years later is that I had these feelings, and what I did is, I would say half a year after really saying, okay, I'm not going to repress, I'm not going to suppress, and I'm not going to purge. And then finally what I did is, which was a glorious moment, it was incredible. It's different for everybody under the LGBTQ plus rainbow. For trans, it means, for me, going out in public and presenting as female, as Tawni, in public, it does something to you. It does something so profound. It kind of lights up that side of your brain. It lights up that part of you that's always been myself. It's always
Right.
there. So I had done that at a club in Los Angeles, and it's a irrevocable act. You cannot go back once you do that.
Okay, so you knew. All right, we're turning the page onto a new chapter.
Yeah. And so at that point is when I had the conversation, like, okay, this is this is what I struggle with. I still wanted to stay with her. I was, we loved each other, truly. I still wanted to stay with her. And so I was still trying to hedge my bets and say, well, maybe I just need to do this thing on the weekends. I need to be the club girl on the weekends. And in a way, I was like leaving the closet. In another way, all the shame and embarrassment, like I'm starting to let that out and let go of that. At the same time, for her, she's going into the closet about her husband. Like she's ashamed that I'm this way. She's ashamed that I'm that way. Eventually what it led to a point where, I was doing this for a while. I was trying to maintain like two worlds. I was trying to make that work. I wanted both worlds.
Right.
And that didn't work.
Right.
Because it's really a dual identity thing. And what happened was I would go out in the clubs, have fun, had hell.
Where was she when you were doing that?
She's just at home
And
watching TV.
Watching TV?
Yeah.
Okay, and did she see you leave the house presenting as a woman?
Yeah.
And so this was a whole reality check for her now too.
Oh, it's a huge slap in the face, like a slap with a wet stinky fish, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's a huge reality check. But I think the real reality check is that even early on into doing that, I realized, oh my God, I need help. So I actually, kind of on the down low, I found a therapist who specialized in gender or gender therapists, so be it. And without telling my wife, I started working with her.
Oh, okay.
And then eventually, even though I was out to my ex to the extent that my wife at the time, to the extent that I was, eventually I really wanted her to stick. I wanted us to stay together, but I wanted to transition,
Right.
And so what I did is actually I got her to join us both in couples therapy with this therapist. And the more and more that would happen, the more and more like it's kind of like these disparate needs between us emerged.
Yeah.
She needed a husband. Mm-hmm. I needed to be myself.
Yes.
I needed a transition. I think what happened with me, because I was doing this double life, really, that extremely affected my mental well-being. I actually started to go on a decline.
Wow. Okay.
And my mental health started getting worse and worse. And even though I was working with a therapist, it started to get worse and worse and worse. And I was, a lot of people who suffer from, the psychological term is called gender dysphoria. But I started suffering when I would present, in my normal life as male, anything that would bring up these contradictions between male and female. Little by little, it just I started suffering more panic attacks, anxiety attacks. Little things could trigger it.
Wow.
Big things and it just started getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And so finally what happened is one day I had like the mother of all anxiety attacks. I mean, really, I was debilitated. And
were you at work?
No. What had happened was, I think the two of us, we had gone to a friend's party.
Okay.
Husband and wife, and it's people we'd known for a long time. But for some reason at this party, they separated by male and female. The guys are on this side of the room, women are on the other side. And that separation did something to my brain. It's like I couldn't take it.
Right.
And I'm sitting there at this party and I'm having an anxiety attack that's so bad. The thoughts were like, change or die, change or kill yourself.
Right.
Change or kill.
Oh my gosh, Tawni.
And so honestly what happened, we left the party, I went to bed and I woke up the next morning, and this is my low point. I woke up the next morning and I made plans to take my life.
For real?
Oh yeah, absolutely. For real.
Oh my goodness, Tawni.
And because the pain,
Right.
the level of pain was immeasurable. And it's funny. It's easy if you have a wound or a gash or, you're bleeding blood or you have some terrible disease, that that visibly shows, what's going on. But there's no representation like that to show how deep that suffering is.
Right.
And so on one way, it was my darkest day ever because I made plans. I definitely.
Oh my goodness, Tawni.
I made plans. And then one thing I didn't share about myself, I'm Buddhist. I chant. In a way, chanting was one of those things. Being Buddhist was one of those things that actually made me feel connected to myself. It made me feel connected to myself in a way that I couldn't experience because I was extremely disconnected from myself, if that makes sense.
Right, yes.
And it also allowed me to navigate all these contradictions in life that I experienced. So in essence, on that day, yeah, I made my plans. I was still in home, but I'm definitely not a clear thinking person at this time. I'm just
suffering.
I'm in the muck of this stuff.
Yeah.
What happened was I passed my Buddhist altar, and I literally thought, well,
you mean at your house?
Yeah. Thank you. It was in the living room, and I was gonna go act on it, and I saw the altar. I'm like, why don't I do my last set of prayers? It's like this will be my last Buddhist prayers, and so I started the whole routine, and I can tell you that was like the miracle prayer, because that prayer was so profound. It was a religious experience. And in that experience, it's like I experienced 4 profound things. And in that time of prayer, I couldn't tell you what time elapsed. I don't know if it was 5 minutes or 5 hours. I couldn't tell you. But here's the profound things. I experienced one thing where I can say, you could call it whatever you want to call it, download, higher wisdom, whatever. Here's what I experienced. One, I experienced that I was shown what would happen if I would act on what I wanted to do at that time. I was shown the people that I would affect.
Wow.
And it was staggering. The second, I was shown that, like, hey, I made promises and commitments to myself and other people. Should I do this? I'm breaking everything I said I stood for.
Right.
And then third, I was like, well, wait a minute. This deep realization that I've been living my life for everybody else but me.
Yes.
What about me?
Yes.
And it's like, and then it's just like the moment of clarity, like the bolt of lightning. It's like, I don't have any other choice other than to be myself and transition. That's the only thing I can do now. Because my brain cannot maintain another thought other than transitioning.
Right.
And so, yeah, it was my darkest moment. It was the best moment because it's total clarity. Everything else is secondary at that point.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That is really intense, really brave for you to share. Thank you so much, even just for that. Like, holy cow.
And so what happened is, like, 3 months after that, I actually started the medical part of transitioning, which involves, taking hormones and all of that.
To my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, do you go through a mental process first with a therapist?
In essence, what I had to do is, number one, to start that medically, you have to get a letter from a psychologist that says, or a therapist, and says, yes, this person, in my estimation, suffers from gender dysphoria, satisfies the following criteria, and then is therefore a candidate to start hormonal replacement therapy or to start medically transitioning. So you need a letter from a therapist to endorse to start that process.
Which you did have.
Yes, which I did have.
Yep.
And then as well, thankfully, here in Los Angeles, there's a lot of very experienced medical professionals. And I started with a doctor here in LA who's still my doctor. He was an excellent doctor, but just so experienced in this field. And so, basically, I'll credit my ex at the time because she was willing to actually go to that step and let me go with me to see the doctor for the first time.
Oh, wow.
And so basically, they have to do some medical basics like, do a health check, measure all your hormonal levels. And then this doctor was so skilled, he could explain it in a way that really made sense to me as a patient, what this is. And so what I did is I started, for me, I had to start at a very slow and easy dosage, and eventually it's like a ramp up.
With hormones?
With estrogen.
Okay,
yes.
Got it. Okay, so that's the first step.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. So then what happened?
So I think it's like, okay, let's just start at a very low dosage, which is something equivalent to what menopausal women get, to fend off the effects of menopause, or to make that easier. So it's like, let's see how this goes. And I will say many people like me will express what I felt. You could say it's placebo, you could say it's need, or the first estrogen pill I felt, it was just intensely awesome.
Really?
It was just like, oh my God. I get emotional when I think of it. It's like, where you been all my life?
For real?
It's like these dark clouds that were deeply in my head, it's like, like clouds just gently start to lift.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like on the inside. It's like my system needed estrogen. In a weird way, if you'll talk to many people like me who are so on the trans spectrum, very feminine or very male identifying, it's like it's like an oasis. It's like putting water in a parched desert.
Wow.
That's what it felt like.
Wow. And just from one pill, you were able to identify the difference.
Oh God, yes.
Wow.
It was spectacular.
Powerful.
It was powerful. So that moment was like, oh my God. And so, what I did in my process, it was a very slow ramp up. And then my doctor's like, look, at any point you can change. At any point the dosage can change. At any point, if this is not good for you, we can go back. Okay, you just need to know that these are all your options and these are available to you. And so basically there hit a time, where they ramped up the dosage a little bit, and then, and it differs for every patient. And then they added in something that blocks testosterone.
Okay.
So which increases the feminizing effect. And then eventually at some point I had a decision to make. And then the decision was I going to continue with this, which is like, oh, hell yes. In the lowest dosage, it doesn't bring about physical changes. But then as you ramp it up, when you ramp it up and you bring it up to a full transitional dosage, that's really it's a second puberty.
For real?
Oh, for real. Because what happens is you start to go through the changes that you go through with puberty. So what happens is breasts start to form. Fat redistributes throughout the body in feminine form instead of masculine
Now, can
form.
I ask you a question? Is it okay if I interrupt and ask you a question? Okay, so at this point, is testosterone no longer producing?
It's being blocked by other medication.
Got it.
The
okay.
body's producing it, but it's being blocked, so it doesn't have an effect.
Got it. Okay, so your body's mostly feeling all the estrogen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the full transitional dosage, that's like puberty. It's a second puberty.
Wow.
So it's, so I'm 50 something and experiencing puberty. And so my fat is, breasts are starting to grow.
Wow.
My skin is starting to get softer. My fat is redistributing. So it's going to my ass and my thighs, which to me is like, oh my God, this is so fucking cool. It's great. I would say at that time, that feeling for me was freaking euphoric.
Wow.
It just felt so good. It's like, this is what I always needed and wanted. This is, it's beautiful. And in a way, at 50 years old, I'm like you, maybe 16, 17, 18-year-old.
Wow.
Because mentally, I haven't experienced the full throw of what hormones feel like, of female hormones. I'm feeling the full Monty of what that all feels like. And then all the expressiveness, and it felt great. Loved it. But now you have to kind of inside your brain, you have to start cognitively, which is a big fancy word, you have to develop that experience of living that way.
Right.
And then at that time, I'm not fully living as female, but I'm going towards that.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. And I think once I made that decision, I'm going to go with a full transition. That's when, my wife at the time said, I want a divorce. Us going through the divorce process, it was really hard because we were both deeply attached. We're attached to all of that stuff. And I think we're attached to each other too.
Yeah.
And so I think what it was eventually, I worked in tech. I worked in tech since 1981.
Okay.
All the way, I think while I was going through this process, all the way till 2016. In 2016, I got laid off. And that's when all this is playing out.
Okay.
That was a benefit. It was a huge benefit. One, because where I worked, I qualified as senior. So I could actually qualify for retiree benefits because I worked there long enough to get that. I was old enough. And I think I was at the time where it's like, I just need to be myself.
Yeah.
And so I could just fully embrace all of that and fully embrace the whole transitional process. And was it smooth and easy? No, it was rocky and crazy.
Yeah. So, okay, can I ask you a question? So you guys get a divorce and then you started the medical side of things?
Yeah. Okay, I started the hormonal, which is part of the medical.
Right.
And then I had already done the legwork to set up to have my first gender affirming surgery, which for me, what I selected to do was to have what you would call bottom surgery, or surgery, if I may say, you can cut it out if you like, but to change to have a vagina.
Right.
Okay. So here's the incredible synchronicity of mine. Number one, I started transitioning when the rules of the game had changed. And what I mean by that is that for psychologists, a year later, there was one protocol. And then a year after that, there's a revision of the psychological manual. It's called the DSM. It was revised and changed and made a lot more open and way less restrictive. And so because of that, it was easier to do it.
Okay.
Also, what happened is insurance started covering more and more and more. So what happened for me, the big major hospital here in Los Angeles, and Cedars-Sinai, started their transgender program in 2017.
Okay.
And at the end of 2017, because I was laid off, but I had retiree benefits, I still had good healthcare coverage.
Ooh.
And because I still had this good healthcare coverage, I did consults at Cedars, and because Cedars is like what, number 1, number 2, number 3 hospital in the U.S.
Right.
And so normally those surgeries they can have a wait list anywhere between a year or 5 years, depending on the surgeon. Okay. And also it involves some preparatory work, which takes about a year. It can take about a year. 2 things happened with me. Number 1, when I went for the consultation with the head of that department, I got a very quick surgery date. Like 6 months.
So this is at the consultation.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
And so I got it like 6 months, which is really quick. And then because of him, and I can say what the prep work is, which is it's painful. You have to get electrolysis in your groin area. So in essence, part of that surgery is to put it like in real colloquial terms, it's like the outie turns into an innie.
Right.
Okay. So you're creating a vagina and you're creating a canal. Okay. Everything that can be reused will be reused. Skin gets reused, all that kind of stuff. And so it has to be complete and free of hair.
Got it. Okay. So that's the first step. Yes.
So in prep for that surgery, a lot of people, but Cedars recommended this preparatory lady who had a different process. It's painful. It hurts because you're down there, but it hurts anyways for anybody who's had electrolysis. Her system got me there in 4.5 months. So it was just perfect.
Right.
It was really perfect. So I had a surgery. It was December 30th, 2018.
Wow. So, okay, can we pause right there just because I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had the surgery December 2018, and could you That sounds so painful, right? Could you move?
Okay.
What was the recovery on this?
I think the basic recovery is like about 3 months.
Okay.
Because, large parts of your growing area have been reconfigured.
Right.
And so before you can exercise, everything has to heal up. The basic recovery is about 3 months. And even that, you have a pretty intense self-care routine, that you have to, that is a must. It is a must. And so, yet the body changes continue. Even though you do the basic recovery, there's both body changes and psychological changes and other changes that go with that. Realistically, for everything fully to kind of come into place, it's probably about a year or so. Because now, I think I can share a funny story if I may.
Yeah, please.
Okay, and we're talking about so. I have a vagina and all that. And then at about a little after a month in surgery, my surgeon says, okay, you have to go to an adult, a sex shop, and you need to get female toys. And you have to start stimulating yourself. So your nerves now have to start wiring up differently so you can have a female experience.
Wow, really?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Because the brain and the mind now have to reconnect all that.
Right.
So, what was a penis? Now you have a clitoris and a vagina. And he goes, it is essential in your recovery that you start to masturbate and explore yourself that way.
Wow.
And so my first experience was, I think maybe it was like 2 months after surgery. I'm mobile. I'm not super mobile. And so I had my first experience, what was near my place in West Hollywood was like Husser Hollywood.
Right.
And so I walked in and said, I want a toy. And then there's like this table of all these toys. Like, and it's not a small table. It's a huge table. And it's just like total overwhelm. Like, what do I pick? I mean, it's like gigantic things and jackrabbits and, it was like, it was like freaking over, and then of course, there's like a guy trying, can I help you? It's like,
yeah.
It was overwhelming. And then eventually, so I picked like a toy, like, I guess it's this. I don't know what to I need a manual what the hell to do.
Yeah.
And I think so in the beginnings, it's like, okay, I think I had an orgasm. And then it's like, you have to get used to actually really having, sexual experience that way, to have female orgasm. Okay. So that part is kind of cool, but it's also kind of, you got to grow into it. Now, I've had friends of mine where they heal up enough that they can be sexual, and they just want to
right away,
like 3 months after.
Oh,
or
wow,
something like
that's
that.
still quick. Still sounds quick.
It is pretty quick. I think for me, no, I was not in that place at all. It was more of a slower process for me, but I think that is just myself.
Yeah.
So eventually, doing this, I would say even after a while of having toys, and then I'm like, maybe I didn't pick the greatest toy. Maybe I need to go back. And And then going back was a lot easier than the first time.
Yeah.
And then I think after a while, it's like, oh, this is how this works. And it's like, oh my God, I had a orgasm,
Wow. Good for you.
Wow. That's okay. That's how women experience their oh my God, I got to work at this.
Slay. Love this.
Yeah. Well,
good for you.
It's, a totally different experience, having, a man's sexual experience versus having a female sexual experience.
Right.
It's totally, 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 totally different. What happened with me, I didn't understand this. And thankfully I had a very experienced doctor. And so I'm talking about this because I think it's important. About 4 or 5 months after surgery, I dropped into a severe post-surgical depression.
Really?
And it's just like, it was so bizarre. I couldn't understand why.
Okay, can I ask you, that was before the top?
Yes.
Okay, so but do you know why that happened?
Yes, there is an explanation.
Okay, and is this common?
Because I had, yes.
Okay.
Okay, one, in any surgery there can be post-surgical depression, but in this case, because, what happened is I was really depressed. I'd seen my therapist and she's like, you need to go on Prozac. And I'm like, oh, no way. She goes, but you're depressed. Yes, you're right. I admit it. I'm depressed. Yet you need to, it's like, I'm not going to go on Prozac because that means at some point I have to go off Prozac.
Right.
And then I'm just going to be back to where I was. And I don't really want to do that. That's ridiculous. So she's like, well, promise me you'll talk to your doctor. I'm like, okay, I promise that. So I went to the doctor and then she was insisting, ask him, tell him I said this. So I asked the doctor. Thankfully, my doctor was extremely experienced. And when I said, well, my therapist wants me to go on Prozac, I really don't want to. And he's like, no, stop. He goes, we're not going to do that. And he goes, this is what we're going to do. But first of all, we're going to get tested and we're going to measure your hormonal levels. We're going to see what's going on with you before we make any decisions. Second, allow me to explain what's happened. He goes, though you've been on hormones all this time, though you've been suppressing testosterone all this time, your body has been profoundly changed. And what used to produce testosterone is now gone. So your body is trying to figure out what the hell is going on. It's sending signals. So I never thought I'd learn this much about hormones. There's like hormones that both men and women have that kind of regulate all that. They're called, luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone.
Wow.
And so he said, it's trying to find something that's no longer there. It's not getting an answer, and it's trying to react to that. So it's normal that you're experiencing this. And so we did some tests, and then it came back, and he's like, look, number one, all women have a balance of estrogen and female testosterone. It's a fact.
Yeah.
Okay, what happened? He's like, okay. You have a good level of female estrogen, but you're below any normal measure of female testosterone. So we're going to need to add some back into your regimen.
Got it.
And once he started to do that, and it took a little while to find the right combination of both of those.
Right.
Because now it's changed. So the body's been profoundly changed. And therefore the dosage and everything that goes with that needs to be adjusted with that.
Right. And your brain's receiving all of this, whether you realize it or not.
100%.
Yeah.
So once we started to go, it's like, oh my God, now I really feel good again. And depression went like that.
Wow. So that's a very common thing then.
And so the reason I share this story is that I know some people, they go through the surgery and like, oh, I'm so down about the outcome. And it's like, get your hormones checked. Go do a consult. Some people will need it added back like I did. Some people don't. It's all individual, how your body works. I think what my doctor ended up saying, I'm a person that it just has a very narrow range of where it operates in its sweet spot. Other people, they have a lot of slack about where that is for them.
Yeah.
Not me. My body's hypersensitive.
Right. Wow, Tawni. That's wild. I had no idea.
Yeah. So I share it because I think I share it with other people because sometimes the mental process somebody can go through, I achieved my dream and how I feel so crummy. I feel like crap. And then all this, it could really spiral down into a really dark place, and it's not really the case.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's like, hey, no, your body just knows that something's not there anymore. Unconsciously, it realizes it, and it's having an impact on your brain. That's really important to state for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So, can I ask you, at what point after that were you like, okay, let's keep it moving?
The three major surgical options are, bottom surgery for vagina, breast augmentation if needed. Some people, due to genetics with estrogen, grow really nice breasts.
Oh, for real?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But in my case, there's like, little small oatmeal cookies, right? So breast augmentation, and then what's something called facial feminization surgery, which gives the face a more feminine expression.
So for you had three major surgeries: the bottom, the vagina, and then breast augmentation, and then facial.
Yeah.
Right. And you started with the bottom.
Yeah, because I just knew I got to have this.
So then after that, how long did you wait until you did?
Okay. Yeah, sure. There are things going on in my life. So to afford the facial and breast augmentation, a lot of my funds had dwindled. And then
Okay, so it's not covered from insurance.
the breast augmentation can be, when I was doing it, the facial was kind of,
Well, what about the bottom?
The bottom was covered.
Oh, wow. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah, that was covered. I just paid like a deductible.
Great.
Oh,
Okay.
it was awesome.
Wow.
Facial wasn't, but also I had my own requirements. I kind of knew what I wanted. I knew who I wanted as surgeon. I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned in transitioning, like something that carries with me today, was like when it came to myself, not to compromise.
Good for you.
Okay. I had to learn that because I'd lived a life of self-compromise.
Right.
Okay. So not when it came to surgeons and surgeries that I want, not to compromise. So what happened was I had a whole nother bunch of stuff going on in my life. And so for those 2 surgeries, I had to wait.
Okay.
So I waited because I had stuff going on with my father. And my father was older. My father had remarried.
Okay.
while I was going through my identification process, and he remarried a gold digger.
Oh,
Okay.
jeez.
Oh yeah, it's a whole dramatic thing. So, long story short, what happened is he was aging, he's getting older, and then he married this lady, and it's like you kind of knew things were wrong, but you don't know the extent that it was wrong. So, basically, I made a decision. What I did is I put a pause on my transition. And I started fighting a legal case for all this stuff going on with my father. I think I put everything on hold 2 years. I needed to do some work, so I just accepted minimal work. I worked as a cashier at Sprouts Market.
Oh, wow. Okay.
During all of this. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I worked my dad's case.
Right. Okay. So basically, everything went on hold because you needed to look after your dad.
All the things. That's the best way to put it. And I think because that was the best outside. Number one is being myself, transitioning. Best decision I ever made.
Yeah.
Best decision I ever made. Second decision was to do this case. Because not only it gave me a lot, okay? It did give me funds. It gave me a lot, but I think more that it allowed me to show the power of who I was as Tawni.
Right.
And it was may we have defining moments. That was a defining moment for me because I had to realize I had to grow into the power that I had as Tawni. I had to grow into the power that I had as a woman.
Good for you.
Okay. And because I did that and then I had all these funds secured, then I was able to do the second 2 surgeries. I was able to pay cash for the surgeon that I wanted.
Wow. Awesome.
I had a really close friend who's a professional makeup artist. He worked in the studios and he did my makeup after that. And I'm like, it's like my mind caught up with the surgery.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, I'm a gorgeous woman now.
Oh, amazing. Tawni.
I'm getting emotional now to cry. It's like those surgeries, what it means they're essential. There's other minor procedures that can go with that, but those are the 3 biggies,
Yeah.
I think it's more when you have what you need, when you have the medical attention when you have the access that you need. That's why this is so fundamentally important, because it's an essential biological need.
Yeah.
And I have no words to explain when all of that came together. It's just like
A whole new life.
It was just like, how do I get used to just feeling that this is like, wow.
Yeah.
And there's this thing in your brain like, I did it. I did exactly what I wanted. I had a vision of myself. I knew what I wanted. Holy crap, I've been on this crazy journey. Insane up and down journey. Most people don't, everybody has their journey of self-definition, but oh my God. And it's like, I get to that point. That was just like, wow.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
Wow. And it's like your life in tech, that's also in the rear view.
Oh my God.
At this
absolutely.
point. It's interesting how it all unfolded, because it's literally like one life ended and another one began
Absolutely.
in all ways, shapes, and forms.
Absolutely.
Wow. Good for you. How exciting.
So yeah, to live both of those lives is also extraordinary too. Because even as of recently, I had to really, come to peace about the person that I was prior to this.
Yeah.
And really appreciate the things about me that were really great. And also appreciate, hey, he got me to here.
Right. And I think that's a huge key factor to highlight, was that the strength was always within you. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And the courage was always there. And like, it's fascinating because like your soul came alive in a sense.
Oh, good God, yes. Yeah, I transitioned. I lost my job in tech. I kept going back trying to find a job in tech. I kept on interviewing in the type of jobs I used to have. Okay. And I would get really close. And one of the things as him, I always prided myself like I could close an interview if I wanted that job. And all of a sudden I stopped being able to close interviews in tech. And it freaked me out. And I'd interview for really good companies, really, gigs that I wanted to have, gigs that I felt I could land, before. And one after one so it took me like 1.5, almost 2 years to just like, I have to raise a white flag on this old career.
Okay, can I ask you a question? Why do you think that you weren't getting those tech jobs?
Well, I think there's lots of reasons. Okay, I think on one reason, I was still growing into being myself.
Okay.
So the confidence, the security, that was one factor. I think the other issue is going out and doing it as a woman. Different world.
Yes. Okay, so are you feeling that now? Right?
Oh, hell yes. No,
Yeah.
now I always felt, I got to experience that.
Yeah.
Even when I didn't know what it was.
Right, but you get it now.
Oh,
fucking hard.
Oh my God. It's like jobs that I would just snatch up easily. All of a sudden, it's just like you get and even like, okay, well, I'm going to downplay my resume and get a gig that I know I could get. And then still, no, didn't happen. And it's like, WTF. Yes, I had to experience that, what women experience. Absolutely, 100%.
Yes.
And then I had to figure out, it's like, when I raised the white flag was like after all this other journey, well, what am I going to do? And I always had this idea, well, maybe I'll go back to school and be like a traditional therapist. I first started taking hypnotherapy. From hypnotherapy, I learned like different modes of hypnotherapy. And then from there, I got into like kind of a coaching institute where they do this integrative, like 7 different modes of practice to give somebody a very integrated approach.
Wow. And so now you're a life coach.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yep.
So impressive. So impressive.
What I really had to learn in all these journeys, it comes back to our own self-love. Mm-hmm. And when you find that,
totally,
when that glass is, a lot more full,
yep,
then that's what you have to give.
Yes, girl.
But if you're looking for a partner, a thing, a relationship, a stuff to try and fill your cup up, well, we know how that can become dysfunctional.
Yes, girl. What advice would you give to somebody younger or older who might be struggling in the transition process?
Okay. So my advice, number one, your safety.
Yeah.
It's huge. And then make decisions and circumstances on that. Number two, find community.
Find community.
Third, you have to work on yourself.
Yeah.
And I think if you do this younger, there's just less stuff to clean up. Yet it's so important to work on ourselves. To all the people who are in, these restrictive states. That there is hope. That you are loved and important. You make a difference, and you can't imagine the power that we have.
I love it. That was a share. Thank you so much. That's really powerful. And like, I'm so glad that you walked by that Buddhist, what do you call it?
Altar.
Altar. I'm so glad you walked by that Buddhist altar and you stopped and did your prayers, because you are definitely a shining light. And honestly, it's an honor having you here. And like, I really mean that. You know, your share is very powerful and heard.
Oh, thank you. And, you know, really, I just hope if there's one word or one sentence or a whole story, as long as if it connects with one person, then this was an awesome interview.
Yes. Oh, girl, thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this content beneficial. If you are in person in need of help, please reach out to the Trans Lifeline, which is right up here on the screen, and or the Trevor Project. There's a lot of resources out there. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this content, please share, like, and subscribe. And however you listen to your podcasts, please share, like, and subscribe as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.